Hi, I'm Dr. David Cosgrave and welcome to the Exam Performance Institute. We're going to start by looking at the two biggest exam mistakes that all college students make and how to avoid them. The first mistake is not answering the question asked. This is the biggest mistake made by college students and the one which has the biggest negative impact on your overall scores. Not answering the question asked. How does that happen? There's two major ways in which this happens. The first way is that you just don't take the time to read the paper properly. Whether it's adrenaline or nerves, or you see a keyword and just go for it, you overlook or misinterpret some aspects of the question and miss certain elements of the marking scheme. This can be tough to take when you come out of the exam feeling like you've done well, and then when results day happens, you're disappointed in your grade. If you misinterpret the question and don't answer the question that was actually asked of you, then you're not going to hit all the elements of the marking scheme and therefore lose marks. The second major way in which this happens is where students memorize answers in advance and go into the exam with pre-prepared answers, and regardless of what question comes up on the topic, they are going to give their memorized answer. This does not always work. There are major risks associated with this technique. You're only going to do well in those circumstances where the question that you memorized exactly matches up with the question asked on the paper. If not, you're going to lose marks because you're not addressing the marking scheme. So how can we avoid this problem? Well, number one, make sure you take adequate time to read the paper. I always recommend to students taking between 5 to 10 minutes at a minimum at the beginning of the exam to read all questions on the paper very carefully. You may also need to highlight, underline, draw stars around, whatever it may be, key concepts and words in the question that make sure that you understand exactly what's been asked of you. There should be no misinterpretation of questions. Give yourself the time to read the paper properly and then go from there. The second recommendation that I have is an obvious one. Do not memorize essay or any answers in an exam. It's detrimental to your success. I've seen very bad circumstances in exams where people have forgotten the essays that they've learned off. This can lead to a whole instance of trouble. But more importantly, as I said, it leads to a situation that unless the questions match up exactly, you're going to lose marks by not addressing the marking scheme directly, which is not what we want to do. You are now a mark collector. You're trying to collect as many marks as possible. They belong to you. So you don't want to fall into a trap where you're unnecessarily leaving marks behind because you're not addressing the various elements of the marking scheme. We've already taught you how to analyze various aspects of a marking scheme so that you can predict in advance the main information that you strategically need to place in your exam answers to collect as many marks as possible. So do not memorize answers and take the time to read the questions properly. The second biggest mistake that's made by college students in exams, which hurts their performance, is not managing their time effectively. You run out of time in exams. How many people watching this video have run out of time? Be honest. I'm sure most of you have. The reason for that in most cases is that students do not have an effective time management plan. You don't have a plan for how you're going to allocate your time exactly in the exam paper itself. You should always have a time management plan for any exam that you take. And what I mean by that is allocating time proportionately based on the amount of marks going for each question in the exam. It's very, very important that you have a time management plan. And where this usually hurts students is in an essay style exam paper. The student spends too much time on question one. They give an excellent answer for question one, but they go over time. And essentially what happens is the amount of time that you have allocated for the other questions is dramatically reduced. And you're rushing to try and complete the other questions. And usually by the time you get to the last question, it's that you're in panic mode and you're trying to collect the last few marks that you can. If you have a time management plan, it usually means that you understand exactly where you are within the paper, how much time you have per question, and how much time you have left per question when you're actually completing the exam itself. If you have 30 minutes per essay, for example, and you reach that 30-minute mark, it is usually best for you to move on to the next question. Chances are that you've collected as many marks as possible in that 30-minute period as you're going to actually collect. The law of diminishing returns starts to apply. The more time you spend, the less return you're actually going to get on that exam question. You do not want to hurt your performance in other exam questions by taking excessive amounts of time on one question. Remember what the distribution of marks actually is for the paper and allocate your time accordingly. The sentence that I hate to see the most on an exam paper is, "Sorry, ran out of time." It really bothers me when I see that on a paper. Because number one, I know that the student didn't have a time management plan. But number two, instead of writing something that possibly could have collected you that last mark before you were finished with the exam, you chose to write that sentence and let me know that you run out of time. I already know you ran out of time because your essay would not be complete or your exam would not be complete. Don't tell me you ran out of time. Try to collect that last mark that you can get in the exam. It is possible, even with the best time management plan in the world, that a student starts to run out of time on their final question. This can happen, and some exams can be a bit tighter on time. If that starts to happen, then you should revert to bullet points and make sure that you get across the key information to address the elements of the marking scheme that you have identified in the exam question. Two biggest mistakes, the two mistakes that cost the most marks for college students in exams: not answering the question asked and running out of time. By avoiding these two mistakes alone, I've just saved you a lot of marks in the exam. Please take note of this video. Please avoid these mistakes at all costs.